So, welcome back to Rising Forward with your coach Terry. I want to actually share a couple of things with you that I think may offer that continued hope. So, the first thing that I will share is I will just quickly reiterate my story from 2008. So, in 2008, I was working for a home builder and got laid off. It was right when a lot of people were losing their jobs, and I had lasted like 4 rounds, I believe, until I was finally laid off. The year before, I had bought a house, I had bought a car, and these things weren't fancy, right? I was living within my means. I had savings in the bank, I had equity, but I got laid off. And then suddenly things were snowballing and housing prices were going down and everyone seemed to be getting laid off. And I know many of you know that it took about a year and a half for me to find a position. And when I found that position, it was not, um, it didn't pay as much as my old position did. As a matter of fact, it was a lot less, but I took it. And then eventually, maybe a year or so later, that's how I got into the federal government. But I want to talk about that time again because in I want people to understand that in 2008 to 2009, you were competing against about 500 applicants for every position. And so, like most other people, I would spend the day online, applying for positions. And this was either right as Facebook was picking up or right before Facebook. I can't remember. But you didn't have like a lot of networking um, apps back then. And so, in a lot of ways, it was very isolating. And people would call to check up on me. Um, but there weren't a lot of networking opportunities that at least not that I knew about back then. I had 2 kids in high school. I had considered going back to school to finish my degree, which I had not done. I had my associates, but I didn't have my bachelor's at the time. And so uh, this was 2008, late 2008. So 2009, um, I decided to go back to school, like early 2009. I think I might have started that winter, and or the beginning of 2009, just go back to school and finish up that degree that maybe that would help you. And so I did that. I finished the degree, and remember, so 2008 to 2009, and then going into 2010 was when I got that job that was paying less. And I got it not because I put an application in. I was working temp work. And so I would work maybe 3 months here or a week there or a couple of days here. And so my money was real funny because I did not have consistent work until the 3 month one. And the 3 month one would have turned into something permanent, but it was like working, it wasn't working at a factory. It was actually working for a refinance company. And it was pushing paper all day. There was no challenge. There was no possibility of growth. You were just to me, it was like an assembly worker, or at least with assembly workers, they're real knowledgeable. And if something happens, you could be in big trouble because that could, have something to do with someone's safety. But this was just pushing paperwork. And so I didn't want to do that forever. But I was glad that I had it because that was the longest term that I had, while I was looking for a job. But when I got that permanent job, it wasn't because of anything I did. It was because someone knew me and recommended me, referred me for a permanent position. And that was because I had, worked temporarily with them a couple of times, filling in for people while they were on vacation. And the reason I even got that was because my mom had recommended me to these people. And so I was doing the temp work. They saw my work ethic. They saw me come in. They saw me filling in anytime someone was on vacation. And so they offered me a permanent job. And that's the one that I took. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna redo this. So let me just turn my. And so I had said when I had talked about the day that I was like, okay, God, this is great. Um, that I have steady employment, but I'm so behind on everything. And the job is not allowing me to get ahead. So by then I had graduated and I was still working at this particular job. And I was praying. I was like, okay, Obama had implemented that home program for a lot of people, to basically be able to refinance and forgive some debt and all that stuff. And like many others, I'd signed up for it and applied for it like 10 times because the paperwork kept getting lost because everybody was doing it. And finally, I got it. And that was a lot of relief as far as the mortgage. But, I was just down in the hole now. The one thing that I had determined was that I would never be 30 days late because I didn't want anything hitting my credit and in a negative way. You work really hard to keep your credit score good, so that people can see that you're trustworthy. And something like this happens. And it was really by the grace of God that I was able to never miss a payment over 29 days. So uh, that was helpful. Reducing my mortgage payment was helpful, but I still felt like I was spiraling out of control. I was in a dead end job. It was paying, but I just felt like this can't be what life is about. It just cannot be. And so there was that moment that I was outside at this job. I was at lunch and, I was writing in my journal and I was praying, God, thank you for this. Thank you for this job. I've been able to get a lot done because of it. I didn't get any nasty little letters from anybody saying that I was behind and blah, 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 blah. But I'm struggling. I got these kids, teenage kids. Teenagers need bigger things than little kids do. And, it's too much. I can't handle it. And so I said, I need something that is more stable. I need something that has growth, potential that I can turn into a career. And I had said that to him. And so this was at lunchtime. And by the time that I had gotten back to my desk, I got a phone call from a former coworker who had, you know, left another job that I was at and had gone into the federal government. And she's like, hey, she's like, there's a position coming up. You should apply for it because I know you can qualify for it. And so I did. I applied when it came out and, I interviewed and I got the job. And it made a huge difference. A huge difference because number one, there was growth potential. It felt more stable. In the federal government, you didn't just have to stay at one agency. You could move around to different agencies depending on what you wanted your career path to be. And there were problems, or not, I wouldn't say problems. There are a lot of criticisms that I can make about, working for the public sector. Um, you don't make as much in the public sector as you do in the private sector, but there are a lot of good things about working for the public sector, and that is the public service component of it. Knowing that you're working for taxpayers, knowing that you're working for, your fellow Americans, knowing that a lot of what the government does is to keep us safe, and to keep our property safe and to keep our food safe and our medicine safe and our national security safe. And so there's I wouldn't say pride. There's when you take that oath of office, you know, there is a weight of responsibility, but it's also a weight of commitment, a weight of um, pride in country, pride in progress. There's something very solemn about taking that oath of office. And I think with me, that kind of like influenced everything that I did in the federal government. There's always in the forefront of your mind that you are responsible for making sure that you follow regulations. You're responsible for making sure other people follow regulations. You're responsible for um, using your wisdom and how you do your work, how you know use your budget because it isn't the work that we're doing is for the American people, right? And I'm sure a bunch of people feel like that. I would say that I've probably met some of the best people in the world, well, in the country, working for the federal government because that's a shared pride, that's a shared commitment, a shared accountability. And so, you know, um, it was, I don't want to just use the word traumatizing. It was a bit bittersweet, I guess, leaving the federal government because you feel like you feel like you've let the American people down. You feel like I can't do out here what I was able to do in there. And um It's no longer you working for your fellow Americans. Um, and there's something really, really sad about that for me anyway. It wasn't just a job, it was a duty, maybe obligation, duty. It's an honorable thing to work for the federal government. It's an honorable thing to work for your fellow Americans. And so that was really sad. But, you know, um, the point really that I really wanted to make, I'm sorry for this this long diatribe or whatever you want to call it. The point is that it wasn't that I was putting in all these applications and then voila, someone found it and called me. It really was about networking. It's not about someone getting you the job, right? It's someone informing you that something is coming up. It's your own merit that gets you in the job. It's your own experience, but it's about knowing people who bring to attention things that you might not otherwise know. It's about people who say, you know what, I've worked with you in the past. I know that you can do this. I know you're qualified for it. Look at your resume, get a feel for what the position is. If you think you can do it, go ahead and apply. It's about that type of support. So it's not about people getting you a job. It's about people believing in you, believing that you can do the work for the position that they bring to your attention. And so I encourage you to tell people that you are looking actively. And I encourage that you share your resume with your family and your friends. Because number one, they can critique it. Number two, they can share it. And number three, if they see something that you may have missed, they may be able to say, hey, something's coming up. And I know that you can do that job. I know you're qualified for it because there's so much going on. And, I remember just application after application after application to the point where you get tired. And so you might miss that one position that you could have applied for, but you didn't because you missed it. And that's where the networking comes in. People can catch those things for you. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to tell my story again about what happened during the Great Recession, because it was really all about people looking out for me. It was about my support system looking out for me. And I'm sure that there are hundreds of thousands of people who can tell you the same thing. Um, that having a support system really, really matters. And I know that this time is a little different. I would really like to know how many organizations are actually who do have positions out there and who are serious about hiring people. I really would like to know just how many are actually hiring Black women or even interviewing Black women. Because we all know that the reasons for why we're all pushed out of the workforce, we know those reasons are completely different than what happened in 2008 and then what happened again during COVID. Um, so even though things may seem dismal and you feel like you are so far underwater that you'll never be able to get out of it. It was, for me, and this is just me, a lot of prayer, a lot of building up that faith because that mustard seed felt like Saturn. Like that mustard seed was, it seemed so much larger. That mustard seed of faith, um, it seemed like it was too big for me to grasp. A mustard seed of faith. A mustard seed of faith. Felt like that was just too much faith to have. I didn't even have that. Um, I did not have a mustard seed. Even a mustard seed felt like it was too much. But it was really faith. It was really the people around me who understood that I was looking. It was me being determined to make sure that I did not go above 30 days, or excuse me, above 29 days in payments so that I would not, so that it wouldn't affect my credit. You know, um, it's really sad that this is what happens to people because of a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with them individually, right? It is very sad that you can work really hard, go to school, pay your bills, and then on the whim of other people, find yourself underwater. And for me, it took 10 years to get out of that situation or to get to a place where I felt comfortable, where I could save money, where I could feel like I had a cushion. And then, this happens. And so I'm a lot older now than I was back then. And so that makes it a little harder to recover when you thought that you had gone through that spell and that bad spell and you're in a better place and you make decisions that are still within your means, but based on security of being able to move around or serve the public. And life can sometimes come right at you so fast that you just, it's just like again. And this time, being pushed out of the workforce, like I said, there was the sadness there because I really loved working in the public sector. This time, I feel like I'm going to be okay because of the direction that I'm going in, and that is using all of my skills to continue to help people. Um, but a lot of women who are starting out, or a lot who were, planning on retirement in a couple of years, aren't don't have the same options as I do, or they don't know how to make that pivot easily. And that's where family and friends come in. That's where people, who know your work ethic and know your heart. That's where they come in to help out. Sometimes that is what it is. that's what it takes to get you back on track. In the meantime, don't give up. In the meantime, don't let that little tiny mustard seed of faith um, balloon into something you think is too big. One thing that really strikes me is Jesus could have said anything. He could have said that plum or that, melon or that mountain, but he said a mustard seed, one of the tiniest seeds on planet Earth. It takes just a little bit to trust that God has your back and that He has a plan for you. And that plan is to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope in the future. And so I really didn't plan to jump on, but I just felt like I needed to share that story, and at least the story of 2008. I know that I haven't really gone into the story of what happened to me last year, but I think that it speaks for itself. And so I really don't, you know, think I need to bore you all with that. But there were a lot of lessons that I did learn in the 2008 part, lessons that I'm trying to carry with me now. And the main lessons were trust your network and, most importantly, hold on to that mustard seed of faith. So I will see you next time.